from the module. The title is Matrix. So first of all, let me explain what is a matrix. A matrix actually consists of data arranged in the form of rows and columns. For example, in this matrix there are two elements. So these two elements are arranged in one row and two columns. So therefore we call this matrix a 1 by 2 matrix. Okay, next we look at another example. In this example we have two elements which have been arranged in rows, two rows and one column. Therefore we call this matrix a 2 by 1 matrix. Okay? So next, if you look at the next matrix, how many rows are there? So there are 2 rows and also 2 columns. So we call this matrix a 2 by 2 matrix. Alright? Okay, next. What about this matrix? Can you guess? How many rows are there? Yes, there are 1, 2 and 3 rows and 1 column. So we call this matrix a 3 by 1 matrix. Next, if you look at the next matrix, we have how many rows there? We have 2 rows but 1, 2 and 3 columns. So we call this matrix a 2 by 3 matrix. Okay, let's look at another example. In this matrix, we have 3 rows and also 3 columns. So we call this matrix a 3 by 3 matrix. So are you all clear with the types of matrix? Alright, let's move to the next slide. In the next slide, I'm going to show you a 3 by 3 matrix because most of the exam questions will be asked on a 3 by 3 matrix. Okay? So for a 3 by 3 matrix, be careful, a matrix is identified by the location of each element. So in this 3 by 3 matrix, we have altogether 9 elements. So they are identified as A1, 1, meaning first row and first column. The second element A1, 2 is actually to identify the second element which is at first row and second column and so on. Alright, so we can say matrix A11 here is located at row 1 and column 1. Next, for A12, which is here, A12 is located at row 1 and column 2. So next we have A13, which is located at row 1 and column 3. The same goes for A21 is located at row 2 and column 1. A22 is located at row 2 and column 2 and so on. Yeah? And 32 is located at row 3 and column 2. So in other words, if we are given an element which is identified as Aij, that means that element is located at row I and column J. Okay? Let's move on to the next slide. In the next slide, I'm going to explain how to classify a matrix. Right? First, we have the matrix called the column matrix or column vector. So for this type of matrix, there is only one column. For example, in this matrix, which is known as a 2 by 1 matrix, there is only one column but 2 rows. In the other example, a 3 by 1 matrix, there is one column but 3 rows. So we call this a 3 by 1 column matrix. Next, we have 4 rows. Alright, 4 rows but 1 column. So this is known as column matrix 4 by 1. Then next we have row matrix or row vector. In this type of matrix, we only have one row. Alright? For example, in this matrix we have one row but 2 columns. So we call this a row matrix 1 by 2. In the next example, there are 1 row and 3 columns. So we call this a row matrix 1 by 3. The other example, we have 1 row and 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Alright, so we call this a row matrix 1 by 1, 1 by 4. Next, what is a zero matrix or a null matrix? So in this type of matrix, all the elements in the matrix are 0. Right? For example, the first example, 0, 0, 0, 0. This is a 2 by 2 matrix which contains elements of 0. The next matrix you can see is a 2 rows by 3 columns, also contains all 0. So any matrices which has 0 elements are known as null matrix. What is a square matrix? A square matrix is a matrix which has the same number of rows and number of columns. For example, in the first example here, which is a 2 by 2 matrix, there are 2 rows and 2 columns. In the second example, there are 3 rows and 3 columns. So therefore, these two types of matrices are known as square matrix. Okay, next, what is the meaning of diagonal? Right? In a matrix, especially a square matrix, right, the main diagonal is actually referred to elements at location A11 and A22 in a matrix 2 by 2, denoted by the blue line. So these are the elements which are located on the main diagonal of a square matrix. For a 3 by 3 matrix, we have the elements on the main diagonal consist of 2, 4 and 0. So in other words, in a matrix 3 by 3 or any square matrix, the main diagonal has got elements with the same number of rows and columns. Right? For example, A11, A22 and A33. Elements located on the main diagonal in a square matrix are elements which have the same row and column. For example, in example 1 just now, the A11 is 1 and the element A22 is 4. Hence, the elements on the main diagonal are 1 and 4. In example 2, A11 equals to 2 and A22 equals to 4. Alright, and A33 equals to 0. Hence, the elements on the main diagonal are 2, 4 and 0. Okay, next we move on to identity matrix. An identity matrix is a square matrix where all the elements on the main diagonal equals to 1 and the other elements equals to 0. For example, in the first matrix, on the main diagonal we have 1, 1 and the other elements are 0. So this is an example of an identity matrix. In the second example, we can see that the main diagonal consists of 1 and the other elements are all 0. So this is another example of an identity matrix.